Hello there. Glad to have you on this Wednesday. Whether you're listening to the show on your radio, online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app, which is free to download and free to use, is sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts. You could text into the show at 719-247-1313. You can also find me on X at Gingerly Tweets. Just want to get the news of the day out of the way. I'll go more in depth on it in a little bit, but Dre Greenlaw of the Denver Broncos has returned to practice. His 21-day window to return from IR is open. As you might expect, I was eavesdropping into Sean Payton, and he was getting very frustrated with people asking him hypotheticals about Dre Greenlaw playing. So I don't know that we'll have any answers today, whether he'll be available for the Giants game, but Dre Greenlaw back at practice today for the Denver Broncos after returning from IR. And I do want to start with the Denver Broncos, but a different topic of conversation. I think I'm ready to call it. The Bo Nix that you see before you right now, this is who he is. He's developed. It's done. Sean Payton's work developing Bo Nix is done. I think we have to stop talking about him like he's your typical second-year quarterback, because he's not. Some of the terms that are thrown around, patience, time, year 3 we'll find out. And I'm not sitting here acting like I'm not the person who has been saying these things. This is someplace that I have arrived at. And I'm saying that everybody else should get on board with this. We know now what Bo Nix is. This is who he is, what you see. And I'm not saying be beholden to what you saw in the Jets game. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying zoom out a little bit, look at Bo Nix through 6 weeks of the season. This is who he is. And the person that you have to thank for this, I don't want to call it an epiphany. That's a little strong. But this conclusion that I have come to, you can thank one of Sean Payton's former quarterbacks for this. This is Drew Brees on First Take yesterday.
I think a lot of these guys need about 50 high-level starts before you're going to know what you have in a quarterback. And that includes college and then at their time in the NFL. In other words, if you go draft a guy who has all this upside potential, but he only had 15 to 20 starts in college, well, guess what? You're going to have to sit around and wait, 2.5, 3 seasons before you can really develop this guy. He needs those 50 high-level starts.
There is no human being on the planet right now that is a better window into the mind of Sean Payton than Drew Brees. Bo Nix is getting there. So when Drew Brees says something, even if this is not him, because he said this is a conclusion he has arrived at, right? So even if this is not coming straight from Sean Payton, like Sean Payton telling Drew Brees, hey, it's 50 starts, you can bet that Sean Payton would at least see the merit of what Drew Brees is saying. Right? The mind meld that went on between Drew Brees and Sean Payton for years in New Orleans tells you that when Sean Payton says something, I'm sure Drew Brees would agree with that. If Drew Brees says something, the reverse is true. And you see this in Bo Nix. Bo Nix sounds like a parrot of Sean Payton sometimes. Sean Payton will say something at the podium, and then 10 minutes later, Bo Nix walks up there and says the same thing. It's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a good thing, because listening to Drew Brees, you can make, I think, as dangerous as it is to assume, I think you can make the assumption that Sean Payton would be almost in lockstep with that idea. So when Drew Brees says 50 high-level starts in college and the NFL, we blew past that before Bo Nix's senior year, or whatever year that was called at Oregon. His final year at Oregon, he eclipsed 50 starts. And we're now, 23, 24 if you count the playoff game? I won't count preseason games. But we're almost doubling the 50 high-level starts. And even if you say, let's leave ourselves some wiggle room. Let's say for some reason that his years at Auburn playing in the SEC are somehow not high-level starts. If you just take the starts he made at Oregon and add what he's played for the Denver Broncos without the playoff game against the Bills, we're at 50. So if you ignore everything that happened with Bo Nix at Auburn, you just took Oregon Bo Nix and Bronco Bo Nix, we're there. If you want to put stock into what Drew Brees is saying. And I made the mistake of disagreeing with Drew Brees a week ago or 2 weeks ago when I laughed at the assumption that, or the assertion that he made that the Philadelphia Eagles aren't the best team in the NFL. And then I watched them lose to the Broncos and get blown out by the Giants. So maybe there's something there. But I think it's more a window into Sean Payton's thinking. That's what's more interesting to me, because when Drew Brees is saying something like that, and if you connect the dots to say that Sean Payton is probably of like mind, now the way that Sean Payton is coaching Bo Nix makes a lot more sense. You know, I've heard people say he's protecting Bo Nix, he's coddling Bo Nix, all of these things. And some of it is, a nice way of putting it. Some of it is more harsh in the criticism of the way Sean Payton handles Bo Nix. But what he's doing, he's coaching him that way because that's who Bo Nix is. That there may not be this giant leap, this quantum leap coming for Bo Nix anytime soon. I think that's the way you have to look at it. Sean Payton is coaching Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos this way consistently because after now 50 starts between Oregon and the Broncos, or far more than that if you include Auburn, Bo Nix has crossed that threshold. He is who he is. So people talk about Bo Nix, he needs a running game, right? Sean Payton has talked about that. It's not because so they could get a better idea of who Bo Nix is necessarily. It's that he needs a running game because of the quarterback he is, because he's not Mahomes, he's not Lamar, he's not Josh Allen, he's not Joe Burrow. He needs help. And by the way, there's a reason why there's only 5 of those guys that I just mentioned. That's the list. Everybody else needs help. And it's just to varying degrees of how much help. But there are 5 quarterbacks that, and even with Joe Burrow currently hurt, apparently he can't play behind a terrible offensive line for health reasons. But those are the quarterbacks that we look at and say, rotating cast of characters, different playing styles, guys in and out of the lineup, it doesn't matter. Mahomes is Mahomes. Allen, Lamar, you're going to get production from them almost no matter what. Bo Nix isn't one of those guys, and he'll never be one of those guys. I looked at the quarterbacks that were taken in the first round the last 20 years and compared them to where Bo Nix is right now, statistically. The quarterbacks that most compare to who Bo Nix is right now, which I think is who he is, Tua Tagovailoa, Kyler Murray, and Marcus Mariota. Of all the first-round quarterbacks the last 20 years that have gotten at least now 23 starts in the NFL, comparing their stats from 23 games, that's the list. Those are the three guys that compare statistically the closest to Bo Nix. Now, one of those quarterbacks is now a backup, and the other two seem to be well on their way to being backups. Right? The feeling around Kyler Murray in Arizona and Tua in Miami isn't great. Because those two guys, Mariota was kind of long ago, but Kyler Murray and Tua right now, one of the biggest issues is they are just not capable of more than they have already been. And those two teams are in situations where they require Tua and Kyler to be more. And that's why they're heading down a road where Tua is not going to be a starter for very much longer, and probably neither is Kyler Murray. But here's what Bo Nix has that all three of those quarterbacks don't. I buy that comparison. I think in this case, the numbers are not lying. I think that he compares to those guys. Maybe not stylistically, but when I think of what kind of a quarterback Bo Nix is, what he's capable of, I think those three guys, it works. It makes sense. But the key for Bo Nix that those three other guys did not or do not have, the defense of the Denver Broncos and Sean Payton. So this is not, all of this isn't to say Bo Nix is going to fail. Actually, quite the opposite. All of this leads me to the Broncos can succeed with Bo Nix. They've already started to do it, right? They made the playoffs last year. They get the big win against Philly. They're set up, it looks like, to go on a run here over the next few weeks. The Broncos can succeed with Bo Nix. But the two questions that are in the future, one in the more immediate future, one longer term, immediate future, can they win big? Can they win it all with Bo Nix? And then the longer term question is when the day comes where Bo Nix is ready to cash in with one of these huge quarterback contracts, can the Broncos keep enough around him to be successful, to continue to be successful? But until we get to those days, right now, we got to stop talking about Bo Nix like we do other second-year quarterbacks. He's not the same. He blows away every single other first-round quarterback in the last 20 years in terms of his experience at, using Drew Brees' words, a high level. He played in the SEC. He played in the Pac-12. He played at Oregon and Auburn. And now he's 23 starts into his NFL career. That's enough. We're done here. He's the Broncos quarterback. He's not their young developing quarterback. He's their quarterback. Bad, good, or indifferent, this is who Bo Nix is. And the question that you have to ask yourself, or that I am asking you, is it enough? Because I don't see where we're going to get this quantum leap from Bo Nix like we tend to see with other quarterbacks in their second year, because he is so different than every other quarterback in the position that Bo Nix is currently in, coming up on Sunday his 24th career NFL start. 719-247-1313. Let me know that via text or hit me up on X at Gingerly Tweets. We'll stick with the same topic because my next guest knows the quarterback position as well as anyone. You'll know the name Sims. Matt Sims breaks down the quarterback position like few others do. So is what Bo Nix is right now enough? I'll ask Matt Sims next on Extra Sports 1300. Hey, Matt, you got me?
I do. Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you okay, man. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So let me ask you, how long in your mind do you need to see a rookie quarterback or second year quarterback, a young quarterback, before you go, okay, this is who he is?
Man, the time limit I feel like is well, I mean, hey, we're learning right now. We got Baker Mayfield, we got Sam Darnold, we got Daniel Jones. I mean, we can't really quantify that with a number, right? Because hey, all human beings, it takes us all time, different times to mature and grow and get better at things. I mean, listen, I think I'm 37, and I think I'm still probably like closer to being 16 than I am to 38, right? So it varies, right? It really does. And for the quarterback position, there's just so many variables that go into it, whether or not you're on a good football team or not, whether or not the coaching staff really is helping you succeed, right? And we've seen certain franchises be able to help quarterbacks more so than others, especially on their paths to success. So tough to actually give you like a surefire answer on that one. But I just know one thing: typically, the guys that are with offensive head coaches have a better head start than most of the guys out there.
What is it that the branches on the Shanahan tree do for quarterbacks that maybe other franchises don't? Because when you mention Darnold or you mention Baker, like whether it's McVay or O'Connell or Shanahan himself, that seems to be a common thread. Do you see something different that they do that other franchises don't?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I think it's more so about the fact that, hey, I cover college football, right? And every week I see college coaches who are supposedly like really good or well known for their craft. And you could just tell, right, from someone who's played the game and has experienced a lot of football throughout his life, that they're just running plays, right? And guys like McVay, O'Connell, Shanahan, all the great offensive minds too, right? Like they're setting things up. There is a choreographed rhythm where they are trying to make certain players play a certain way early in the game to take advantage of later in the game, right? And every play that they run has a rhyme or a reason where they're trying to see how people are reacting to that play, what the defensive coordinator is doing to adjust to those plays, right, that are doing well. And then, of course, they just slowly but surely implement those plays that exploit those things that they're doing. And I was fortunate enough to be with Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta, and I saw it firsthand just how meticulous he is with taking advantage of, in some cases, just one defender. If this one defender gets misplaced and overplays this, we're going to do this instead. And that's really the beauty of football too, because it wasn't like we were the most talented football team in the NFL, but we did have Matt Ryan, we did have Julio Jones, and that sure gave us a lot of opportunities to be successful with his mind behind it.
What has become more of an inexact science? You mentioned how you cover college football, and there's been so much discussion about Arch this year, and it's like, and Arch Manning didn't really ask for a lot of this, to be fair to him, but we did it anyway because that's what we do. What's the more inexact science these days? Evaluating young quarterbacks in the NFL or quarterbacks that are making the jump from high school to college?
High school to college, I think, is one of the biggest jumps athletically, personally as well. There's just so many things, and especially too with just social media, the NIL, the money involved with it, being away from home, being isolated, right? Kind of reinventing yourself or finding your own personal identity outside of where you were raised or how you were raised. These are all just part of that process of maturing and growing up. And unfortunately for Art, unfortunately for guys like my brother, or even myself, right? Not to the same extent as Arch, but as soon as we put on those shoulder pads and helmet with the names that we carry, and of course, just the people who came before us with those same names, we fully understand, right, the journey, right, the hero's journey that we're embarking on, and know that it's going to be a little different than someone else, right? And of course, going to get too much credit, right? And too much blame all in that same window. But for Arch, I mean, hey, credit to him handling everything really well, like a professional, like you would expect someone with a last name like that. And, for him this year, it's about learning how to be a starter, learning the grit it takes to be that type of dude, and leaning on your defense, because that really is the cornerstone of that football franchise right now. Is Texas has a really good defense. Keep leaning on it. Lean on guys like Quintravian Weiser, and hopefully their offensive line keeps continuing to improve and show improvement. And hopefully Arch can obviously build off of that momentum, especially against that win against the Oklahoma Sooners.
Matt Sims, host of Sims Complete, and in addition to a variety of other things, I enjoy listening to Matt on NFL radio when he joins Bob Papa on occasion. Let me get back to the NFL and ask you about Bo Nix and what you were seeing from him. And I was just talking before you joined me about how, Bo Nix, 61 games at the college level. Now it's 23 plus the one playoff game. And what is Bo Nix now, and how much more growth is there? What do you see when you watch Bo Nix?
Man, I see Bo Nix. He's a bona fide franchise quarterback. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The confidence in which he plays with, the talent that he has. Right now, there's no doubt. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but there they are, still kind of surviving and advancing during this struggle offensively, and very similar to Arch, right? He's learning how to be the dude, right, at the NFL level, which asks of you many different things than it would at the college level, right? And with the Sean Payton, right, as his support system, his coach, and being around guys like Drew Brees his whole career, he's going to guide him in the proper way. But very much like that discussion we had at that college level, the Broncos are built very similarly in that fashion. It's about the defense. It's about what they're doing, right? And Vance Joseph and Nick Benito and Cooper and the rest of the guys defensively, that secondary and how good they are. So continue to lean on that aspect of your franchise right now, right? Win close, tough football games. And I really hope, biggest thing, right, is can Sean Payton and Bo Nix just find a way to incorporate, like Cortland Sutton into the game more, faster, quicker, right? Evan Ingram, right? Big free agent signing. Not really sure why it was such a big deal this offseason, because I haven't seen it kind of pay off yet. Now, he did have that touchdown against Philadelphia at a critical moment when they needed him most. That was awesome. I just would like to see a little bit more opportunities thrown his way going forward. So guys like him, Ingram, and Cortland Sutton need to get them involved in the game plan a little sooner, get some easy completions to them. We just saw, right, the Kansas City Chiefs, who are a quote-unquote struggling offense, we saw them nickel and dime the Detroit Lions defense to death with just simple RPOs, quick receiver screens, and just the building of the confidence of their quarterback seeing the ball completed. And that's what I think Sean Payton and Bo Nix need to do a little bit more of here these next few weeks. And the good thing for them is they're going up against a defense that has struggled to cover on the back end. The defensive front is legit. There's no doubt about it with the New York Giants. But the secondary has been a huge question mark, and they should be able to present some pretty tough moments, I think, for the Giants secondary this weekend.
Matt Sims, my guest. So let's flip the perspective. I think a lot of people were a little bit nervy about Jackson Dart being thrown in against a very good defense that the Chargers had. Did pretty well. Did pretty well against the Eagles. But the Broncos defense might be the best in the league right now. How difficult will this be for Jackson Dart? And what do you think Vance Joseph and the Broncos defense are going to try and do to Dart?
Man, I think they really can kind of attack him in a lot of different ways, because I do think that Vance Joseph has one great advantage going into this weekend's matchup, is that there's no real threat on the outside that you have to be fearful of, right? I do think that secondary wise, with Surtain, with Moss, even the safety play has been tremendous too this year too, with Hufanga being added to that secondary. I believe that this will really be a tough task, right, for the New York Giants, and also too, for Jackson Dart. Yes, he had that game in New Orleans, right? That was like his first road test. But this is a different environment, right? And I've been fortunate enough to be on the opposing team in Denver, right, in that environment. And, for whatever reason, the Denver Broncos stadium and just the home fans and all that are one of the more underappreciated hostile environments I feel like that I've ever seen in my football career. And I've been to some crazy places. So, the communication is going to be absolutely huge, right? How much can they lean into their running game with Cam Scatterbo? I don't know if they'll be able to do that quite as much, because I do think that Denver is just better than the Philadelphia Eagles defense, especially in the defensive line, and really just Zach Allen being able to hold up in the interior part of that front. So for them, it's going to be about stay patient in the run game just to take some pressure off of Jackson Dart, but can you make and create explosive pass plays, I think, off of the play action? Jackson's done a great job of using his legs. I would be shocked if Vance Joseph allows him to get outside the pocket, use his legs, and scramble for first downs like he did against Philadelphia. I think right now Vance Joseph and this defense are a little bit more buttoned up than the Eagles are at the current moment.
Across the NFL, we have had, it's been a little chaotic. Like we kind of lean on one team and then they lose and then we move away. What 1, 2, 3 teams, if you like, that regardless of where they are record-wise right now, you're like, I'm still riding with this team the rest of the way?
The Denver Broncos are honestly one of them. They are to me, and I say that because I feel like the defense side of the football is Super Bowl caliber, and they're were my preseason favorite to go to the Super Bowl along with the Green Bay Packers. And it's funny that you say that and ask me that question in that way, because Green Bay, I can't lie, I'm starting to fizzle a little bit with just my belief in them. Of course, the other team that I was kind of counting out a few weeks ago, but then after seeing them against Detroit, is the Kansas City Chiefs. And the same reasons why I like the Denver Broncos. It's not because of the quarterback. It's not because of the head coach. It's because of the defense, right? Because I believe in that defense. I think Shamari Connor, Drew Tranquil, and of course, when you got a productive Chris Jones, right? I mean, and Nick Bolton as well. You got just superstars, I think, at every level that go underappreciated because of the grander scope of the NFL, and we only focus on the quarterback position. But yeah, I see the Chiefs. I see the Broncos. Unfortunately, right? That's a problem considering the fact that they're in a similar territory that I got to battle for. But the other team that I think is sneaky, and I'm really excited to see how they progress, and do think that they can progress into a serious contender at the NFC, is the Seattle Seahawks. And they're another one too that they're dealing with three other really good football teams within their same division, with the Los Angeles Rams, who have great young talent on the defensive side of the football that is promising. The secondary is getting absolutely torched way too much, though, for me at the current moment. And then, of course, with San Francisco, the ability for them to win football games despite that they have their backup quarterback in there and being effective that way is pretty impressive. So can't count out Kyle Shanahan and those boys, but yeah, definitely like what I'm seeing so far from the NFC West and the AFC West, oddly enough.
Well, this Sunday, Broncos and Giants in the late window, 2:00 Mountain Time. Required viewing right after is Matt and Phil Simms on Simms Complete. You could check that out on Believe on YouTube, BLEAV. Give Matt a follow at Simms Complete on X as well. Matt, this was awesome. Really appreciate the insight, and hopefully we get to talk again soon.
Absolutely. Well, a pure pleasure to join you on your show. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Hit me up anytime, and I'm going to go outside now and plant some more mums for fall season, man.
Oh, good. I'm sorry I kept you from that. Get back to the important work, Matt. We'll talk soon. That is Matt Simms. Great breakdown there. Bo Nix likes the Broncos, but great insight into what the Broncos defense could do against Jackson Dart this weekend. Again, yeah, people wanted Russell Wilson leading the team in, but with Dart and Scatterbo, it is an interesting game nonetheless. We'll repurpose a lot of that because I thought it was really good stuff from Matt on our social media platforms, and then you'll be able to hear our conversation in its entirety again in the 5:00 hour today. So that is Matt Simms, again, at Simms Complete on X, and he and his dad, Phil, host a show on Believe's YouTube right after the late window of football games, right before Sunday Night Football. Coming up next, let's shift gears for just a minute because there's maybe something going on with the Denver Nuggets in a good way. But I'll get to that next here on Extra Sports 1300. The newest nominees for the Extra Sports Athlete of the Week are available for you to vote on right now at extrasports1300.com. Michael Berry of Doherty, Corinna Ariano of Palmer Ridge, Jack Walton of Discovery Canyon, and Rayanna Somerville of Fountain Fort Carson. Cast your vote now, and the winner will be revealed on Friday. It's our Extra Sports Athlete of the Week, sponsored by Blackjack Pizza and Salads. I think Matt Sims and I just became best friends. Going to be having Matt on the show quite a bit moving forward. Great insight from him there. Again, you'll hear that in the 5 o'clock hour again if you missed it, and put some of the stuff on our social media. I want to move to basketball just for a moment. And look, one should not get carried away with preseason numbers, regardless of the sport. You can't get carried away. Guys can stuff the stat sheet in every sport, right? Doesn't mean that's who they're going to be. So pay no real mind to the fact that Jamal Murray last night put up 30 points on 50% shooting in 27 minutes. Don't pay attention to it. Don't look at it. Doesn't matter. It's preseason. It's the Bulls. Fine. Don't look at it. But you should pay attention to how he looked doing it. Jamal Murray looks lighter. He looks quicker. He's got more bounce. He was making some really difficult shots, which obviously is a byproduct of his body being right, that he's able to elevate or shoot off balance, all that kind of stuff. Looked really good. And this is something that has been going on for Jamal Murray in this preseason. And what you should also pay attention to is what David Adelman said about it after the game. He says his movement, he's just moving so well right now. His stop and go, everything about being an athlete, he just looks like he is in great shape. He would go on to bring up the words in shape again in the same answer. This is what the Nuggets, with David Adelman as part of the staff, he wasn't the mouthpiece for the team a couple of years ago, but he was on the staff. So what Michael Malone and Calvin Booth had intimated, you better believe David Adelman felt that same way. And David Adelman has mentioned during the offseason multiple times, without naming names, the importance of the Denver Nuggets showing up in shape, ready for game one of the regular season. Sure, everybody should be doing that, but it is obviously speaking directly to Jamal Murray. He clearly put in the work this offseason, to his credit. Now he's going to make it, sound like we're idiots for even asking about how him being in shape has helped them this preseason. Because he says, yeah, rest gives your body time to recuperate. It's not rocket science. Your body gets rest, you recover, and you get back at it. Nothing crazy. Like seeming like he is oblivious to the conversation that has been around him for most of his career, if we're being honest. Now, the in shape thing goes along with the injuries, right? But we've been talking about the health of Jamal Murray for years. And he acts like we're crazy for talking about it. That's so matter of fact. It's not. It's a huge, huge part of not only Jamal Murray being at his best, but by extension, the Denver Nuggets being at their best this season. So with an in-shape Jamal Murray, which he clearly is, healthy, in shape, ready to go for game one of the regular season, which is a week from tomorrow. Now, in theory, with him not having to play himself into shape to start the season, the Nuggets can kind of hit the ground running. Now they can get off to a faster start, Remember last year, they kind of stumbled out of the gate. They were, I think, a couple of games above 500 around Thanksgiving. They're like 4 or 5 games over 500 around Christmas, and it took them a 9-game winning streak, a stretch where they won 10 of 11 games in late January into February to kind of get to a good spot in the standings. Now, you don't have to do that if Jamal Murray and the Denver Nuggets are right game one. You can start to build up those wins earlier and don't have to rely on, well, we got to win 10 of 11 or 9 in a row or 8 of 9 in order to get in a good spot in the standings. But the next test is obviously going to be how he holds up over 82 games. Right now, he is in, he can set his own schedule. He can go at it at his own rate. He could do all of these things. He's very much in control of his body and everything that he does. Once the NBA season starts, you could try to control for it, but you got second night of a back-to-back. You got 3 games in 4 days. You got East Coast road trip. You got a cross-country flight. There are all these other variables that kind of sap at your, in addition to the fact that there won't be as many practices to stay locked in and in shape, there's all of these other things that could sap at the health of any athlete. But with Jamal Murray's past troubles, it's a bigger question. Right? Is he going to remain in this shape all season long? And can't be too Pollyannish to think that Jamal Murray is going to play 82 games. It would be nice. It's a goal. But and even if he plays 82, he's not going to be 100% healthy for 82 games. So he's going to pick up a knock. He's going to tweak something. He's going to twist something. It's going to happen. But if he's in better shape, then the fact that he may have to stay off of his feet for a couple of days, it won't impact it. So all of this is just the start. And it's an incredibly promising start to what is a huge year in Jamal Murray's career. He must be an all-star. This Nuggets not having any all-stars outside Nikola Jokic has to end. They're one of the 3 best teams in the National Basketball Association. They should be more than Nikola Jokic. Right? In terms of all-stars. They should have another all-star. And it should be Jamal Murray. It's great that Aaron Gordon has entered those conversations. It should be Jamal Murray. Their second best player should be Jamal Murray. So this is a very big year for him in terms of the perception of him, but also for the Denver Nuggets. Because the reality is, the further you move away from your championship, the less likely it is that you're going to get back there. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. You could bring, prime Michael Jordan back out of retirement. The Golden State Warriors were able to capture another title after many people thought their dynasty was over. But in general, the further you move away, the closer you get closer to having to remake your roster than you are to making another run. And this would be 3 years removed if they don't win this year from that title. And number 15 is number 15. We know the importance of him. He's their best player. He's the best player in the world. They have to have him. He has to play at the level he always plays at. But the next thing that has to happen, the very next thing, is that Jamal Murray has to be playing at an all-star level and be available enough to be considered an all-star. Because it's not just that 2-man game with Nikola Jokic. It's not just the starting 5, and when Jamal Murray is right, it arguably being the best in the NBA. It's the second unit too. Last night, he's staggering with the second unit. And the good news is that all the actions and all the types of ways that the offense moves and the plays they draw up, they can do the same thing with Jamal Murray and Jonas Valanciunas that they can do with Murray and Jokic. It won't be as effective, obviously. But that has been such a big issue, is that you can't find a player that's even close to what Nikola Jokic is to be able to do some of the same things. They can do some of the same things with Jonas Valanciunas. You saw Jamal Murray last night running a lot of two-man game with Valanciunas because they need Jamal Murray with that second unit. There aren't enough shot creators on the bench to not stagger Jamal Murray with them. Right? Tim Hardaway is a good shooter, but he doesn't create his own shot. So you're going to have to stagger Jamal Murray with the bench. So Jamal Murray is key for the best thing about the Nuggets, which is the two-man game. He's vital to their starting five, and he's also very important to their second unit. And by extension, he's incredibly important to their title chances. But what you have seen in the preseason, especially last night, very good early signs about where Jamal Murray is right now. Again, the NBA season 1 week from tomorrow, or at least the Nuggets season, and they'll be playing the Warriors. You can hear that game right here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in hour 2 on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching the show on our social media platforms. First and foremost, YouTube, because we're all on YouTube these days, and various social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and X. You could watch the show there, and while you're there on any of those platforms, like, subscribe, drop a comment, and tell your friends. You can also text into the show and call at 719-247-1313. Make it a real interactive experience on this show, which is what I enjoy most about this. So let's talk about the Denver Broncos. And I started the show today by saying, and whenever I say anything about Bo Nix or the Broncos, it's going to be construed as a negative. I'm really not being negative. I think I'm being realistic when I started the show by saying this is who Bo Nix is. I don't think there's any quantum leap happening anytime soon. Now, some things can get tidied up. We have a very small sample size about how he performs on a big stage. That's also something else that young quarterbacks can showcase. So I'm not saying that Bo Nix won't be better in some ways moving forward. But I just think we're 23 starts into the NFL. We're 61 starts behind that in college. This is who he is. And he is a part of a larger picture here, which is the Denver Broncos and how good of a team they are. And Matt Sims joined me last hour. He's a big believer in Denver. 3 teams that he's absolutely riding with the rest of this year: Kansas City, Denver, and Seattle. And he's starting to waver a little bit on the Packers. I got to pull him back in because both he and I were both high on the Packers. Got to rein him back in and get him back on my side. But he specifically mentioned Denver, Kansas City, and Seattle. So any idea of, is Bo Nix going to be worth the money in 4 years' time and all that kind of stuff, that's all for down the road, right? I think what I'm trying to get at is live in the moment. Right now, who you're seeing Bo Nix as is who he's going to be probably for the rest of this season. There'll be some games where he looks really good. There will be some games like the Jet game that doesn't look great. And it's because he is reliant to a degree on the run game. The Broncos offense as a whole is very reliant on the defense. That's just who they are as a team. And if you want to be very optimistic about it all, I remember that the last team that hoisted a Lombardi trophy was not an offensive juggernaut. But Bo Nix is who he is. And that is a quarterback that is not going to be able to compensate for other things going wrong. And that has been the case with the Broncos offense the first 6 weeks. They get thrown off schedule. They don't end up doing well. They have to punt the football because they just don't have that quarterback that can look at a 2nd and 20 and scoff. There aren't many of them. But Bo Nix certainly isn't one of them. And I downplayed the loss of Ben Powers last week and said, look, as far as offensive linemen go, he's not a tackle. He's not a better guard than Quinn Meinerz. So it's down the list in terms of how catastrophic Ben Powers' injury is. But then Matt Parrott gets in there, and he's the one that short circuits a number of drives. So clearly they were missing Ben Powers on Sunday. And now to compound the issue even more, he was the next man up. Now who's the next man up? That appears to be Calvin Throckmorton, who they elevated from the practice squad while putting Matt Parrott on IR. Sean Payton gave a very predictable response. Said basically next man up. My question is, can it truly be that now that you're on to guard 3 on the depth chart? Or guard 4 if Quinn Meinerz is guard 1. I know they have 2 separate guard positions on the depth chart. But if Quinn Meinerz is your best, Ben Powers was your second best, Matt Parrott was your third best, and now Calvin Throckmorton, who wasn't even on the active roster, is conceivably your fourth best, and now you're putting him out there for an offense that very much needs to get rhythm, very much needs to play ahead of the sticks, and you have a less experienced player, a less talented player that you're putting on that offensive line. So Sean Payton can say what he said today, and now you would expect that from any coach across the NFL. But the real question is, can they really? Because Powers isn't coming back anytime soon. Parrott really isn't coming back anytime soon. Can the Broncos continue to operate this way, or do they have to, with a couple of weeks before the trade deadline, do they have to make a move? And I think they have to look at it. You know, this season, what Sean Payton has talked about this season potentially being for the Denver Broncos, what I'm saying about Bo Nix and how maybe he's not capable of compensating for what the Broncos lack. I think they have to be aggressive. And there are 2 cities right now that seem in some form or fashion ready to throw in the towel. And usually what accompanies that is they're ready to move players. You've already seen the Cleveland Browns move on from Joe Flacco. Certainly not an earth-shattering deal. They had already moved on to Dylan Gabriel, but clearly the Browns are in some way open for business. And then you also have the Tennessee Titans, who have decided that they like so much when the Jaguars and the Bears fired their coaches in year 1 and liked how well it worked out for them, that they decided to do it themselves by firing Brian Callahan. So could the Titans be open for business to try and stockpile draft picks as they try to rebuild around Cam Ward? I think you have to look in those 2 places. And I'm not, Joel Bonito, Wyatt Teller have been both very good guards in the NFL for a long time. And I think it's become more clear with the way that Parrott performed on Sunday, with him getting hurt and them having to go even deeper into the depth chart, that the Broncos have to be looking to make a move. They can't allow the depth that they were so proud of this offseason continue to get sapped. Because we've already seen it. For all the depth that the Broncos seem to have, they traded Devon Vele, right? We don't need Devon Vele. Okay? How are you feeling about the wide receiving core outside of Courtland Sutton? Right? We have so much depth on the offensive line. We can go from Ben Powers to Matt Parrott, no problem. Matt Parrott was terrible. Probably as an excuse, he was hurt. But he was not good, and now you're replacing him with someone that you think less of. And we've seen the impact of Dre Greenlaw missing on the defense and how teams have been able to exploit that position. So all this depth that the Broncos have, it's good with the injuries they've had, that they feel good about the players they can bring up, but also should they feel good about the players they brought up? Right? Because there was a time there with Dre Greenlaw hurt that the Broncos really struggled at that position. Losing Ben Powers 1 week, I know, but that's all we have. Not great. So I think that the Broncos need to be active here. They need to keep this thing together. Coming off of the Eagles win, and as ugly as Sunday was, they're still in a position to rattle off a lot of wins, something that has happened this time of year, almost like clockwork under Sean Payton. They go on 5, 6, 7-game winning streak. You could see perhaps this team rattling off 8 consecutive wins. Will it happen? Probably not, because if the NFL this year has taught us anything, it's that what you expect to happen this week is not going to happen, and it's going to reframe everything you think about this league. So the Broncos 2 weeks out, George Payton's got to be picking up the phones. Because it was made pretty clear on Sunday that the Broncos going to their depth behind Ben Powers, not going to work. So Joel Bitonio has been a name thrown out there, but they got to start. There are some teams that are bowing out. Tennessee, Cleveland. George Payton should be dialing up those area codes and see if he can't plug this hole on the offensive line. Now, always seems to be this way, right? One guy goes out, one guy comes back in. And in the aggregate, I would say the Broncos will take this. Matt Parrott gets put on injured reserve. Back comes Dre Greenlaw. Greenlaw back at practice. So just to put it in NFL terms, his 21-day window is now open. They can activate him and put him on the active roster anytime in the next 3 weeks. So does the fact he's practicing today mean he's going to play on Sunday? No. In fact, if I had to guess, I would say Dre Greenlaw would not play on Sunday. But the window is open, and he's healthy enough to be practicing with the team, although he was practicing with the team before they put him on IR. So we'll see. Sean Payton said nothing, as he always does. In fact, he got angry at people who are asking just simply, what does Dre Greenlaw, if he plays, bring to your team? I think that's a fair question without asking him whether he's going to play on Sunday. But this is a guy very important, right? You saw the teams exploit the middle of the Broncos defense early on. The schedule right now doesn't look super daunting, but are the Texans starting to turn it around? The Dallas Cowboys certainly have the personnel to be able to exploit it. And then you have the Kansas Cities, the Washingtons, the Chargers again, Green Bay, Jacksonville. They need Dre Greenlaw, right? They need him. And they got him back at practice, and we'll see if he's available for Sunday's game against the New York Giants. 719-24-7, 1313. More Drive Time Sports after this. Saturday afternoon, Air Force hosts Wyoming in college football. Experience college football's best pregame. I have 4 tickets for you and 3 people that you would like to watch a football game with. If you text Falcons in your name to 719-247-1313, the 13th texter will get 4 tickets to Air Force in Wyoming. It's a 1:30 kick. And on your way in, make sure you stop by Falcon Alley. I will be there with our friends at Frank Azar, hooking you up with goodies as you make your way into Falcon Stadium. So, first step, get your tickets. Text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. One other Broncos item today. For the second consecutive week, a Bronco has been named Defensive Player of the Week in the NFL. And it's not Surtain, and it's not Nick Bonito. It is Jonathan Cooper, and I could not be more thrilled. Here's the reason why. Jonathan Cooper doesn't get nearly the love he deserves as a pass rusher. And it's difficult, right? There's only so much time in the day. You have the reigning Defensive Player of the Year, and you also have the NFL leader in sacks. So it's like you go down the list, there's not enough airtime for everybody. But what Jonathan Cooper has been for the Denver Broncos, he hasn't been as prolific as Nick Bonito. But he is the most efficient pass rusher the Denver Broncos have. You've heard Sean Payton talk about, needing to limit the snap count with Zach Allen. And coincidentally, have we talked a lot about Zach Allen? Right? He was a guy that was productive because of the high volume of plays that he had. Sean Payton has also talked about limiting the snap count for Nick Bonito. That hasn't been a problem for Nick Bonito. In fact, it's made the start to this season even more impressive than the start to last. But Jonathan Cooper, you don't hear that talk about the pitch count because he's already limited in the number of snaps that he takes. And yet he's still an incredibly productive pass rusher. So to have him get acknowledged in this way, and he certainly deserves it. He had a monster game against the New York Jets. But it's a reminder because I think Jonathan Cooper is like, oh, by the way, they also have Jonathan Cooper on the other side of Nick Bonito. And together, they form what has been the NFL's best pass rush duo over the last couple of years. And then for fun, go ahead and sprinkle in a little bit of Zach Allen and once on occasion, Jonah Ellis, who missed practice again today. I thought Jonah Ellis was low-key one of the best Broncos players the first few weeks of the season where we were all fixated on the negative. Jonah Ellis popped out every time. Every one of those games, Jonah Ellis was making plays. But good to see Jonathan Cooper recognized. And the thing about Jonathan Cooper, it's not only the efficiency, but it's also the type of pass rusher he is. There's a reason why him and Bonito work so well together. Bonito is your typical, speed pass rusher. Nick Bonito is trying to get around you. And we've talked about ad nauseum about the speed at which he gets off of the line and is able to beat opposing tackles. That's what he does. That's his game. He's a speed rusher. Jonathan Cooper goes through guys to get to the quarterback. And in some ways, that is the more difficult pass rusher to deal with. And I think one ties into the other. I think the way that Jonathan Cooper plays and how difficult it is to slow down a guy that can literally go through you to get to the quarterback. I think that's why you see Jonathan Cooper be so efficient when it comes to getting to the quarterback. You know, with Nick Bonitto, you could just force him out wider and wider and wider and eventually take him out of the play. I mean, teams haven't really done that, but in theory, that's what you can do with the speed rusher. With somebody like Jonathan Cooper, you just got to outmuscle him because he's not trying to get around you. He's trying to go through you. And that's a more difficult type of rusher, I think, at times to handle. And then the two of them complement each other so incredibly well. And together, along with the rest of this defense, they are on pace to clear the single season sack record by a decent margin. They're on a record pacing start to the season. And I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I think it coincidentally was when Bonitto was named Defensive Player of the Week. And there was a lot of talk about him being, you know, the next Von Miller. And he was asked about that kind of stuff. I got into it. You know, you look at the quarterbacks that the Broncos have the rest of this season, just anecdotally, I won't bog you down in numbers. Just think about how often Justin Herbert gets hit, Patrick Mahomes, how often he gets hit. And then you throw in, you know, a Geno Smith that you're going to be going up against in a few weeks, and a Dak Prescott because the Cowboys throw the ball a ton. Like, I don't know if they're like what I said a couple weeks ago was I don't think Nick Bonitto is going to break the single season sack record. What I do think Nick Bonitto can do is break the Broncos single season sack record. I think he has a chance to do that, which is held, of course, by Von Miller. But that's just one individual player. Part of my reasoning for saying I don't know if Bonitto is going to break the single season sack record is because you also have to account for Jonathan Cooper getting sacks and Zach Allen getting a sack and Jonah Ellis. So they're just too many mouths to feed, so to speak, for one guy to hog all the sacks. Yeah, Nick Bonitto has got more than anybody else, but the idea that he's going to sustain this pace and end up breaking the single season sack record, I have my doubts. But what I think you could put a little bit more stock into or believe in a little bit more, this Broncos defense as a whole, sacking the quarterback more than any other team in NFL history. I think it's absolutely possible. Because some of the quarterbacks that they're not only the way they're playing in the scheme and everything and the talent that they have, but also you look at some of the matchups and you're like, not every week is going to be Justin Fields. That's the bad news. But you have a lot of quarterbacks that like to hang on to the ball for a little bit. And Jaden Daniels is another one. Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart wants to use his legs a little bit. I think the Broncos will have a chance to get to him a few times, not 9 times. And that's part of why they're on this record-setting pace is because of the ridiculous game they had on Sunday in London. Not every week's going to be that way, but you have Bonitto, you have Cooper, who are different pass rushers, but almost equally as effective. Maybe he doesn't always show up in the box score, so to speak, but what Cooper does, vital to the Denver Broncos' success. And he had himself a game on Sunday and deserves the defensive player of the week. Not that you care, but Patrick Mahomes was the offensive player of the week. 719-247-1313. We'll have more Drive Time Sports and give away some Air Force hockey tickets next as well. The national keyword for the 5K a day is earn, EARN. If you text that to 95819, you have a chance to win $1,000 with our 5K a day. It's something we're doing all day, 5 days a week, 5 chances a day, 5K a day. It all makes sense. So text earn to 95819. Speaking of winning, if you would like to win, you don't even have to put the $1,000 that you may win with the 5K a day towards Air Force hockey tickets. I will just give them to you. Want pair of tickets to see Air Force take on St. Thomas Friday night. St. Thomas is a team that will be in the same conference as DU and Colorado College coming up next year. They are a ranked team, so the hits just keep on coming for Air Force. You start off with ranked DU, then unranked CC that is now ranked, and then now you play St. Thomas. So, but it was a good weekend for Air Force hockey. A lot to like about that first weekend, but a lot to like about all the hockey teams in our state. So if you like to see the Falcons take on St. Thomas, essentially the same rules apply. Let's just have you text hockey and your name to 719-247-1313. 13th texter to do that will win a pair of tickets to see Air Force hosting St. Thomas on Friday. And then just to clean up this item of business, congrats to Bobby, who picked up a 4-pack of tickets to see Air Force football take on Wyoming. You got all that straight. We're giving away a lot of stuff. You're winning a lot of stuff. It's what we like to do here on Extra Sports 1300. I want to get to this text from Aaron. He's talking about Jamal Murray. He looks svelte, looks fit, looks springy. All good things for the Denver Nuggets, at least to start this season. Aaron says, I'm excited about the Avs and the Nuggets. Parlay odds are pretty great for them both to win a ring. Get your bet in now before they're both on top of the standings. I did look at that. And right now, at my shop of choice, I could get an Avs Nuggets championship parlay plus 9,875. So essentially, if I placed a $10 wager on that, I would win $987.50. So I will second Aaron's sentiment there. We've kind of moved off the last couple of years of the dual champions, right? We kind of thought after the Avs won that maybe they go back to back and the Nuggets would win. We've kind of moved off of that. I think we're back on. I think it's an indication of how highly people think of these two teams, and you should, right? They're both very much. We're going to nitpick. I just talked about the power play yesterday. We are going to nitpick. Some people are wondering where the production is from the second line of Nichushkin and Nelson and Landeskog. We're going to do that because these are championship contending teams. They should be held to a higher standard. We should nitpick. But it's not to say that there's not a lot else that's going well. Scott Wedgwood is still the Avs goalie and has been playing great, save for, a couple goals maybe he wants to have back. But he's their backup goalie, and he's playing to start the season like a number one. The top unit 5-on-5 has been spectacular. So much so that every day that goes by, it feels like another, 250K gets added to Marty Natchez' next contract. 5-on-5 overall, this team's been very good. Goaltending's been good. Defensively, they've been very good. But we know, especially against Dallas, how important the ability to score on the power play is. And I didn't like Nathan McKinnon's comments after the Dallas game that fans don't know what a good power play looks like. I think many Avs fans do. They were booing the result because the result was the same as it has been a lot lately against the Dallas Stars. The one team that those results can't be that way. But there's so much good going on. And the Avs are certainly, yes, the power play has been a little bit of a struggle. But the way they're playing, and I heard Bruce Boudreau say this on NHL Network, and it goes to something that I mentioned right before the season started. Opening night, I said this on this station. I think that the Avs are on a mission and are going to look like a team on a mission, and that was exactly the sentiment that Boudreau shared today on NHL Network. This team looks like they are locked in. Their struggles on the power play are not because they aren't locked in and they aren't trying. In fact, sometimes there's this tipping point where it looks like the Avs are trying too hard on the power play. But that team looks like they're on a mission, and I don't know how the Nuggets aren't. Right? I mean, they absolutely are. They did all of this stuff. They fired Malone, brought in Adelman, made him the full-time coach. They traded Michael Porter. They add all this depth. They're expecting results. And Jamal Murray, to my earlier point, looks like he's locked in. Looks like he's on a mission. So both of these teams are on a short list of contenders. But with that, you get scrutinized a little bit more. We're not in it for the little victories along the way anymore with the Avalanche and the Denver Nuggets. It's about producing. It's about beating the teams that we want you to beat, the teams that you need to beat. It's not about beating Utah or Chicago or San Jose or the other day, Buffalo. It's about beating Dallas. It's about beating Edmonton. Same thing with the Nuggets. It's not about beating the Washington Wizards. It's about beating Minnesota. They got to move past that. They got their own matchup problems with the team, like the Avs have with Dallas. Nuggets have that with Minnesota. And then you have the defending champions that are just as healthy as they were last year. Was it the Linkin Park song that brought us back into the segment? Heavy as the Crown? Yeah. It's what it is. You're held to a higher standard, and we're going to nitpick because you got to have everything right to win a title. We found that out twice. We found it out with the Avs, what that team was, and with the Nuggets as well. But I'm definitely excited for it too. Avs season, other than that little speed bump with Dallas, been very good, and I'm looking forward to the Nuggets. 1 week from tomorrow, they will be in Golden State. Be in San Francisco, to be more accurate. NBA season actually tips off on Tuesday, which brings up the where can you find these games? They're on Amazon, they're on NBC. We'll do that as we get a little bit closer here. But yeah, that if you want to go that parlay, and then if you really want to get spicy after these last two wins, maybe sprinkle in something on the Denver Broncos. Maybe not Super Bowl. Maybe just a sweetener for, I don't know, playoffs? See about that. Giants coming into Empower Field on Sunday. We did really want to see Russell Wilson, didn't we? We wanted that delicious moment to show off how much better off the Broncos are without him. But to get the Giant Bros, Cam Scattaboo and Jackson Dart, will be interesting. And Matt Sims, and you can hear my full interview with Matt coming up next hour. But Matt kind of intimating, like, look, what Jackson Dart did on the road in New Orleans, it's great. And you take those kind of victories for a rookie quarterback. But this is Denver going into Empower Field is a very different road environment and a very different team. And we'll see how Jackson Dart holds up against that coming up on Sunday. Tomorrow on the show, Jay Paterno. He is a trustee at Penn State. Obviously, his father was a longtime football coach there. Talked to him a little bit about James Franklin's firing and where they're going to be looking next. I mean, I don't know that you're going to be able to get somebody more accomplished. I know you can't. You can't. And I've seen the rumor mill, like, I get it. You start off with the aspirational, like, you're going to get Marcus Freeman to come from Notre Dame to coach Penn State. And I think it was Heather Dinich that was on TV the other day, like Ryan Day and all, like, come on. That's fine. We're just starting this off, but come on. Those guys aren't leaving where they're at. And they're just going to leverage all that talk for a bigger contract at their current school. But clearly it's a changing of, not culture, because I think James Franklin had a decent culture, a vibe change. Get people feeling good inside and outside the program about Penn State football. They're not going to bring in somebody with more wins than James Franklin. But to me, it reminds me a lot of, in some ways, about the Nuggets firing Michael Malone. Right? Some of the details are different, but it's just the idea of, look, you're not going to be able to get somebody more accomplished than Michael Malone. But you saw the way that the team responded to David Adelman, and it made it very clear that this was the type of guy that was going to be able to get the most out of this team because they respond to him. They respect him. They felt good playing for David Adelman. And Penn State's going to be looking for the same thing. So looking forward to that with Jay Paterno tomorrow. A little chat when it comes to that. Couple other items of note. Russell Westbrook, former Denver Nugget, is going to be playing with Colorado Springs' own Nick Clifford this season. This has been the landing spot Sacramento since he opted out, right? It was always Sacramento, and now it gets done. So Russell Westbrook is going to be in his 18th season. Danny Green said this the other day, that apparently the Nuggets told Westbrook that if he were to opt in, that he was not going to be utilized in the rotation. They were going to stick him on the end of the bench. And what does that say to me? Because does Russell Westbrook deserve to be stuck at the end of the bench based on what I saw last year? No. No. You could talk about the fit and what you're going to get out of him. Can you win a championship with him? All that kind of stuff. But in terms of how good of a player he still is, he's not the 14th guy on an NBA team. He's not. So why were the Nuggets telling him that? Because they didn't want him to opt in. And it doesn't even have to be about the fit or anything like that. Like, I don't think that Russell Westbrook, I know all the feelings around the Denver Nuggets were better once they got into the playoffs, but don't forget Russell Westbrook that last week of the season when he missed the shot, made the mistakes against Minnesota and San Antonio, and he bailed on the post-game interview, wouldn't do it, and then he was being like confrontational with the media when he had to speak to them. It's a pattern of behavior with Russell Westbrook at the beginning of the end. It could be some of that. But I think it's also this bigger plan that Ben Tenzer and John Wallace had in mind, where they were like, we're going to trade Michael Porter. I mean, they had to have an inkling. They had to be thinking once they got on the job, like, hey, we got to make a move. Who can we move? Who do we want to move? And inevitably, they've decided on Michael Porter. Did they know what they were going to get? No. But it was those two benefits. Like, we can get in a player that is arguably as good as Porter, but fits better, Cam Johnson. But the bigger thing is we can open up this flexibility to add depth. And you need all the money you can get in order to do that. And you look at it now as the Nuggets are currently constructed and you say, where would Russell Westbrook fit? Let's just say money were no object. Where are you putting him? You going to play him over Bruce Brown? You going to play him over Tim Hardaway that brings you 3-point shooting that you desperately need? You going to play him over Jonas Valanciunas? So all of a sudden, like, okay, maybe Russell Westbrook wouldn't be the 14th best player on the Denver Nuggets, but it's a more crowded bench. So maybe Russell Westbrook would be 9 or 10 or 11. But, you know, he goes to a team in Sacramento that he's going to be able to get his. They're not a team competing for anything this year. And I think Russell Westbrook, I think at times he can be, you know, temperamental and he doesn't conduct himself in the best way. But overall, he's a good dude. Young team there in Sacramento. I think he'd be a good fit. A good fit on a team that doesn't have very high expectations for the upcoming season. I don't know. Do you have parent-teacher conferences tonight? Because I do. It is that time of year. So I will bid you adieu. Our time up a little bit earlier today. You will be able to hear my interview with Matt Sims. The first hour of the show coming up. If you missed any of it, that will be coming up next. Nothing on the sports slate tonight, but tomorrow, obviously, another week of NFL football begins, and it will begin with a pretty intriguing matchup. Aaron Rodgers against Joe Flacco. Talk about that and more on the Denver Broncos as they get ready for the New York Giants. My thanks to Matt Sims for being my guest, and thank you for listening and interacting. Enjoy the rest of your evening.